Okay, welcome to the Blender Masterclass. So in this tutorial, I will try to squeeze the useful techniques that I find useful in Blender so that you can learn this modeling software very quickly. Firstly, let's talk about the different modes. Firstly, I need to set up something first. So I add a cube and I can change its dimension here. You can see what I press down the right corner. And then now I have a cube, and then there are basically two modes that I find I'm using quite frequently. So firstly is the object mode. In object mode, you can modify the whole object. Yep, move around. And then in edit mode, you can modify vertices, edges, and faces. And you can switch between the three of them by pressing 1, 2, or 3. So for 1 is vertex, and for 2 is edge, and for 3 is face. So when I press 1, I can select a single vertex and make changes accordingly. When I select 2, then I can select the edge. And when I choose 3, I can select the whole face. All right, and then you can do multi-select by pressing Shift and click. Yep, and there you go. You selected multiple faces. Okay, and then let's go back to object mode. Let's talk about the different views. So this is the orientations. And then by default is set to global. So global means we are using the global axis. So global x-axis, global y-axis, global z-axis. And then for local, it means the local axis of a face of an object and so on. For normal, it's quite obvious. It's following the normal of that face or object. And then here is the transform pivot point. We have bounding box, 3D cursor, and individual origins medium point. So the first four are the ones that I use more often. And then and then here we have the different view options. Firstly, if I add another cube, scale down. Yeah, and if you do not enable the X-ray, you cannot see the cube behind. But if you enable this X-ray, you can see the cube behind. And then there are also different view options. Firstly is the wireframes, and then the second one is the mesh without any texture or materials, and the third one is materials with lighting. And then the last one is the material without lighting. So if I add a light source here, yeah, and then you can see the change. So so the third option will not be affected with light sources. The whole thing is lightened up by default. All right, now let's talk about some transformations that I find very, very useful in my modeling process. And the first one is bevel. So for bevel, you can create smooth edges. So if I choose 2 and select some edges, and then I press Control V, and then you can see I can introduce some smoothness into the mesh, into the corners especially. And then you can roll up or down your mouse button to increase or decrease the number of new edges. Yeah, and then you can press right mouse click and then Shade Auto Smooth. And then now you can see the edges become smoother. Yeah, a second operation. Oh, by the way, you can use Control Z to go back. The second operation is inset. So I go to object move first. And this is usually for face. So I choose 3. Then I press I. And then you can insert the face. And the other operation is extrude. You can press E to extrude in a certain direction. Or you can, or if I rotate the whole thing, and then I extrude, yeah, it will follow the normal by default. And then I also need to mention the most basic operation, which is press G to move the mesh around, or you can press G and the specific axis that you want to move. For example, if I press GX, then it will move in the X axis. Yep, and GY to move in the Y axis and GZ in the Z axis. And you can press R to rotate, and it's the same. You can limit your rotation in certain axes by pressing R followed by X, Y, or Z. And then you also have scale by pressing S. And then you can scale in a certain direction. For example, I scale Y, I scale X, or I scale Z. All right, and there is also a loop cut. So for example, I can press Ctrl R to introduce a lookup, and I click left mouse and followed by right mouse to introduce the new edges. And then I can, for example, select these 2 edges, scale in DC direction. Yep. And then I press 3, select this face, then I extrude. You can see we can create some shapes using the combination of these techniques. All right. Let's talk about the influence of the axis and the pivot point. So, for example, I have a cube, and then if I move in X direction, where using the global axis, it will just follow the global axis. But if I change it to local, firstly I need to, for example, rotate this one. Yep. And then I change it to local. I insert this face. And then when I extrude, you see, now it's following the local axis. So it's not the global y-axis. Global y-axis is this line, but it's following its local y-axis. By the way, when you extrude, you can also select y, x, y, or z to extrude in a specific direction. Yeah, and then let's talk about the pivot points. So here I need another cube. Yeah, if I select these 2, and then I choose bounding box, I scale down, it will just the pivot point of transformation will be the bounding box. But if I choose individual origins and scale, they will scale by the individual origins. And for medium point, it's the same. They will scale with the pivot point of their medium point. And then there is also 3D cursor. So this one, there is a very useful technique. For example, I can select this object, then I press Shift S and cursor to selector. Then the cursor will move there. And then I change the pivot point to 3D cursor. Then when I scale these 2, they will scale with the pivot point of my 3D cursor. Another useful technique is that after I move my pivot point and I select another object, if I want to move this object to the position of the pivot point, I can just press Shift S and then selection to cursor. And if I want to reset the cursor, I will just use cursor to for origin. Yeah, and this is especially useful if, for example, I want to move this box on top of the other box. Then I select this box, I press 3, select this face. But before that, you need to go to edit mode by pressing tab, and then you choose cursor to selected, and then you exit the edit mode and go back to the object mode, and then select this object, and then I use selection to cursor. Now you can see, yeah, the other cube is on top of this cube. And then what if you want to align this box exactly on top of the other box? You need to use the snapping option here by enabling the snapping tool. So you can choose vertex, face, or edge. So for example, I choose the face object, and then when I move the top box down, it will just snap to this face. So you can see if I switch to the x-axis, you can see they are the two faces overlap with each other perfectly. So it's the same for vertex and edge. For example, if I select vertex, then when I go down, yeah, and I snap to this edge, yeah, it will just snap to the position of the vertex. For edge is the same. And what about this? This one is proportional editing tools. So it will affect the area bounded by a circle, I believe. So for example, I want to move this edge, but I also enable this proportional editing, and then I can select this, and then I can move. And when I roll my mouse, it will the circle will appear. So the circle indicates the areas of influence of your operation. So if I limit to this the circle to here, then it will just influence a bit. But if I enlarge the circle, you can see like more parts of the mesh is affected by my operation. So this is proportional editing. Yep, and moving on to the next topic. Oh, by the way, when you add a new mesh, it will the new mesh will appear at your cursor position. So be careful with your cursor. Next, we will talk about some modifiers that I find very useful and use frequently. So the first one is Boolean modifiers. So you can create some wonderful shapes with the Boolean modifier. So I have two cubes, and then I move this, and then GX. You can see as I move things, right? I move in a certain direction first. Yep, GC. Yep, and then we have this. And then I can add a Boolean modifier to, for example, to take the difference. And then I can select this object, and then I apply. And then when I did this, you can see, wow, yeah, the parts that this cube overlaps with the other cube is subtracted, is like deleted. So there are also other possible operations that we can do. For example, union. We can union the two cubes, and I apply. And when I delete the smaller cube, and then you can see the two cubes are union together. So when I press tab, I can see that the topology of the shape is quite good. Yeah. Another way you can combine the two another way you can combine two meshes or two objects together is through Control J, which is to merge the two objects. Let me show you. And to add a cube, and I add another cube. Yep, I select this, and I select the other cube, and I press Control J, and the two you can see from the upper right corner, the two cubes are combined together. So I press Control J. Yep, and then I go to tab, and I enable X-ray. You can see actually the topology, right, of these two is not merged together. So this operation by Control J is just to simply merge the two meshes without any topological changes or optimization. So now the two cubes are quite simple, but if you have some very complex shapes, then it is very easy to mess up the topology if you just simply use Control J. So my advice is always use Boolean modifier. So when you use Boolean modifier, you can see your topology is maintained quite nicely. If not, you can just make some small adjustments to restore the topology. So my recommendation is never use Control J unless you have no other options. That's my advice, and like it comes from my experience. All right. So you can also there are also some other useful modifiers. Let me show you another one. I need a cube. Oh, I need a cube. And then I go to here, the modifier properties. I can add array modifiers. So you can increase the count, and then you can also increase the distance between the object, the meshes. So you can see, yeah, you can have some very nice arrays of meshes. So you can also select merge here if you want the whole thing to merge together. For example, if I change this to 1, and then I edit. By the way, for array modifiers, you only need to edit one instance. So it will be very easy for you to model similar objects in large quantities. So if I do a loop cut here, and I select all the faces. Oops. Oh, another thing is you can use X-ray to select. Yeah. And now all the faces here are selected. Yeah. And then I can extrude and scale up. Yeah. And then I can also merge. So you can see, yeah, I created some form of a tube or something. Yeah, just by some simple combination of the array modifier and some operations that I mentioned before. All right, this is the array modifier. Somehow you may find that your array modifier is not working. This may be due to the transformation. So one way is you can select the object, press Ctrl A, and apply all transformations to make sure that your array modifier works correctly. All right, and next we have mirror modifier. So I can move it to the side, and then I choose mirror modifier in the y-axis. But now you can see the object is not appearing. This is because I didn't apply the transformations. So if I apply all transformations, then you can see, oh, the other side, the mesh on the other side is appearing, and the mirror modifier is working correctly. But be careful that when you apply transformations, the origin of the object is set to the world origin. So be careful with this. So if you don't want to do that, one way is at the center, make sure you put your cursor at world origin. So you can create any shape, for example, a cube, and I can use the cube as the mirror object. You can see it will also achieve the same effect without changing the position of the origin of the object. And you can also enable clipping if the two objects are nearby. So I can show you. This is particularly useful when you modify an object from a 2D perspective first and then make it into 3D. For example, I can create a plane first, and then what I usually do is I use lookup right in the middle. Yeah. And then I go to X, and then I select the face here and I delete the face. I press delete to delete the face. Yep, now it's only in half, but then I can add a mirror modifier here. Y-axis. Yep. And then I can just modify, go to edit mode and modify it from one side. For example, I can select a vertex here. I go to Z. Yep, I can do some changes and also introduce loop cuts. And then I can modify this. Right. So now it's in 2D. Then there are two options. One is either, by the way, you notice that when I apply mirror modifier, I only need to model one side of the thing. So the other side will just follow what I have done on the other side. And then there are two options to make it into a 3D object. So the first way is you go to edit mode, you select the face. You select the face, and then you extrude in a certain direction, and then it will become 3D. Yep. And the other way is to use solidify. Yeah, it will also add some thickness. You can increase the thickness. Yeah. So there are two ways. But if you have multiple modifiers, be careful with the sequence that you apply the modifier, because it will somehow affect your mesh. So if you find that applying one thing will make your mesh wrong, then you apply the other first. Yeah, so there is a certain sequence that you need to follow. All right. And then there's another modifier that I want to mention. Let's create a cube first, and then I scale Z to make it flat. And then I scale. All right. So I can select one face, and then I extrude, and then I scale down. All right. Now we have this shape, and then I can use the subdivision. Where is it? Oh, subdivision surface. And then I can increase the level viewpoint. You can see now the shape becomes quite smooth. Yep. But what if you want some sharp edges? You can select the edges. Yeah, and then you can press Shift E. Yeah, and it will become like this. Yeah, I think I can use another thing to demo. What about a cylinder? All right. So for sharp edges, right, when you for example, shade auto smooth, and then you extrude and scale down. All right, now it becomes like this. But what if you want this loop of edges to be sharp? You can go to mesh, and then shading and sharp edges. And now you can see the edges are sharp. Yeah. And if you are using subdivision modifier, you can select the edges and press Shift E. I think that's it for the common modifiers. Yep. And let's move on to the next topic, which is texturing and material. So for material, you can just go to here and they will add new, and then you can assign a material, for example, yeah, change it to red. It's normal that you can't see anything because I need to switch to the viewport shading to the one with the materials on. And what if I have multiple materials for the same object, or I want like specific faces to have a certain color? This is actually very easy to do. You just need to add another material. For example, I change it to blue. Yep, and then I go to edit mode. I select this group of faces, then I assign the new material to it. So now you have an object with multiple materials. And lastly, there are some naming conventions. So for materials, it's mainly M red, something like that, and M blue. Yeah, this is for your import to Unreal Engine. If you are using Unreal Engine, then for static mesh, it will be SM, for example, cylinder. All right, now these are some naming conventions that are good to follow. All right, and then let's create some shapes with the techniques that I mentioned just now. So I can create a cube, and then I can move it up. I can limit myself to certain direction. Then I enable X-ray, and I select these two. Oh, I go to edit mode first. Then I select this edge, and then I can and this edge also. So I in toggle X-ray, scale Y. Yep. So to make it this, then I can also scale Z, make it smaller. All right, and then I can select these few edges by shift selecting. Yep, and then I can use Control B to bevel. Then I can select this face. I can insert. I can extrude inwards. Yep. And then now you have this shape. Then I select this, and then I use cursor to selector. I add a cylinder at the cursor position. Just scale it down and shade auto smooth. Then move down, and then yeah, and then I enable snapping by face. Then I move this up. It will snap to the face. Yep, and then I can go to edit mode, select this face, and extrude, but I let go. But be careful that when you extrude and press right mouse to let go, the newly created face will remain there, unlike loop cut, bevel, or other operations. When you press right mouse click, the operation will just be cancelled. You can see like if I move around, you can find that the new face is not gone, but remain in the same plane as your original face. So now I can scale. So actually extrude and scaling combined together is a very, very powerful tool. Can scale up by more. Go to this, and then I can scale in, I can I can make it move in the y-axis, and then I can extrude again, scale down, and then inset, and then extrude out. Yeah. What if I want this ring of edge, loop of edges to be sharp? I press 2 first, and then select by double clicking the right mouse button. Or I think I can do Alt and select. Oh, I cannot. So I just double clicking one edge of the loop, and then I can go to mesh. I can use shading, sharp edges. So now it becomes sharp. Yeah. And what if I find that the neck of this robot is too large? Then I can go to here, make sure you toggle X-ray, select this, all the faces, you can double check, and then go back to S-Wheel, GZ. And now the proportion looks normal already. Yep. And what if I find this is too long in the y-axis? I can, in x-axis, sorry, I can just scale it down in the x-axis. Yep. And then let's create the hand. I can go here. And I can select this ring of faces, cursor to selected, and then I can add a cube. I'll scale it down. Just move it in the y direction, way up, scale Z, and then I go to this. So you can see like I'm editing in one direction first, and then the other direction. Scale X. All right. Now it looks kind of normal, but a bit more. So scale X. All right, then I select this, and I can G, Y to move this face in the Y direction. All right, let's make the connector. I select this face. I use cursor to selected, and then can add a cylinder and scale it down. Also shade auto smooth. And I need to scale it the y-axis a bit. All right. And then I add another cube. Then GX. Scale it down. Scale it down. And then I can select this and GX. Move it. Yep, I can press Shift D to duplicate, and then press X to limit it to the X direction. And then I can scale it down in the Y direction. Yep. Yep. And then I go to here, cursor to selected. I add another cube. Scale it down. GX. And then I go to edit mode. I can extrude in the X direction, and then I can select these two. I can press Alt E to extrude along the normals. Yeah, and I can press loop cut, and then I can press. Make sure you select bounding box, and then you can press SY to move these two edges together or further away in certain direction. But if you are selecting individual origins, then you can see, yeah, that they will just perform the operation by their own origin. So you can press SY, then scale this, select these two, then you extrude. Yep, and then you have the hand. Yes. So this is one simple, very, very simple robot. But if you want to add like more details, you can go this, select this face, select this face. You can insert, and then you can scale Y, and it will become like this. And then for this, select this, and then you can press I, and then your Alt E, extrude a lot normals. Yeah. So like there will be more details. So the key point here is that you need to think about the topology of the whole thing first, like how you gonna make it. You can go through in your head. What is the first step? What is the second step? And then there are actually multiple ways to achieve the same effect. For example, I create a cylinder. I move in the y-axis. Scale down. All right. So if I want to do this kind of effect, for example, I insert first, insert again, select this ring, and select this ring by double clicking, and then I Alt E, extrude along this. So I can create like this type of shapes. But actually there is another way, which is you can extrude first, and then insert, and then you extrude outwards. Yeah, this will also do the same thing, but the sequence of actions is actually quite different. So you need to have a certain concept in mind, and then you think about the topology when you perform the actions. So for example, if I want to model a sword, what does it look like? So I can use the annotation. For example, the sword can be something like this, right? Then after I have this concept, I can just use a plane first, and then I go to the Y direction to make the shape first. For example, I move here, I scale it up, then I select this, and then I enable vertex snapping. I use GY, sorry. Yeah, to do something like this. Then I will also select this, GY, and then I select this, vertex, and GX. Then if I want to exaggerate the plane a bit, I may do something like this. So after I have this shape, I can select the whole face, and I can extrude. Yeah, and this is the plane. And then select this face, I can extrude, and I can select these two. Oh, sorry, I think I need to extrude in X direction. Yeah, then I select these two. Oh, by the way, I think I need to extrude further. Yep, and then I select these three faces, and then I can extrude again along normals. And then I select these four edges, and I right mouse click and subdivide and increase into two. Then I select these two, and then I scale Y, and I select these three faces, and I extrude, and then I scale this down, but the Y remains the same. So there you go. You have the plane. Yeah. So you need to have the concept first. And then after you have the basic shape, you can also like add some more details or decorations. For example, I think there's the model is two down, can insert. I can insert and then I can shoot along normals. Yep. And then it will become better. Yep. And that's it for the modeling. And then let's come back to this model. So you can for this type of like symmetrical model is very useful to use the mirror modifier. So I just use the mirror modifier in y-axis, and then the mirror object, I select the body. Yeah, and then I will repeat the same things. Y-axis. Another way is that you can use Boolean modifiers to union the different parts together, and then you perform mirror modifier once. But then the drawback is that when you combine different meshes together, then it becomes harder for you to do manipulations or modification later on, especially when you are doing like materials, for example. Because it's easier to assign the whole object and a material instead of like going into the edit mode of one object and then you select the faces and assign materials to individual faces. That will be more troublesome. All right. And that's it. Now we have a very, very simple robot model just by performing very, very simple operations. You don't even need to like subdivide or do anything like that. So now you have a very simple model. And this concludes the first part of the tutorial. The next part, I will briefly talk about rigging and animations.